That work all right, Caroline? Fingers crossed. Philippa, welcome to your first session. Nice to see you.
Just finding that right, but I've got the disappearing toolbar thing just playing with me at the moment, so that where the toolbar disappears at the bottom. So
yeah.
when I was trying to respond to you, I'm playing like this game of catch up with it.
I'm glad you made it. That it all worked out. And Philippa, welcome again.
Thanks very much.
Is everyone back? I think it's everyone back. Welcome back, everybody. Alison, the floor is yours. We're going to think about feedback and discussion. Is that right?
Yeah. So it'd be great to hear like some highlights from your conversations, some of the sort of main things that came up in the chat box. And we've also got time to hear from a couple of people as well. So if you have got something compelling that you'd like to say, or you had a really interesting discussion in your breakout group, then yeah, feel free. You can either raise your hand or just unmute yourself and go ahead. And otherwise, just put some bullet points in the chat box. What came up for you in terms of encouraging, developing, supporting the building of those the areas on that model for you with your leaders?
Hi Alison, it's Bridget here. I thought maybe if I could just share a bit from the group that I was in, and guys feel free to jump in. But we talked a lot about sort of making sure that people understand what does collaboration mean, especially when you're multi-layered, you're in many geos. What does that mean? How does that translate? Do we all assume it collaboration is this in this country and that in that country? And then we got to talk about the making sure that maybe a bottom-up approach as well is also really important to come through. But obviously we need leaders to also lead and behave and be aligned. And then we talked about your model and thought actually it's quite a nice network. It's not quite, it is obviously an amazing model, but a great narrative to be able to kind of to bring our leaders on that journey, and to sort of be able to talk about how you say you balance each of those in order to bring about that sense, that feeling of the right collaboration together. So we thought we'll buy the books, we'll give them all to the leads and just tap that with the model if that's the only thing they read. But yeah, that was just some discussions that we had in our group as well.
I love that, particularly around the the balancing. And I think sometimes what sometimes part of the conversation is helping leaders to understand that it's not going to be a perfect balance all the time. Sometimes there will be times when you need to focus more on the business, and sometimes you will need to focus more on people. But as long as you've got that kind of the other end of the scale in mind, so that you're not preferring or giving preference to one over the other all the time, it's really important. Thank you. Great observation. What else? I think we've got time for another person to share. Was there anything in the chat box? So if you've got something that you'd like to share, then do feel free to pop it into the chat box. But yeah, what else came up in your discussion? Give me from another person.
A really nice point from Faye in the chat box.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, using colleague resource groups and trade unions to get more diverse perspective and feedback. Bridget, you were saying bottom up as well, weren't you? It was comparable point.
Yeah, I think that's that point around bottom up is really important. And one of the things that I also like to emphasize is that yes, as Bridget said, it is up to the leaders to create that environment, but what we're trying to create are good teams, and you need to be a good team member as well. Like, we want everyone to carry the culture and everyone to be responsible for building good cultures, and that means that we need to develop skills across at all levels of the company, not just within leaders.
I was saying a good point that as you say, Alison, people need to be a good teammate, but that's true. That's fair enough. Taking responsibility. On the other hand, sometimes, as Faye was saying, it's not always easy to get feedback and direction from colleagues about what topics they might want covered. Despite asking, or as Caroline was saying, collaboration might be difficult if the culture doesn't support it.
Yeah,
your culture.
Absolutely.
When you've come across that, have you managed to sort of get more collaboration going despite those barriers?
Yeah, well, I mean, it kind of relates a little bit to some of the points that I'm going to make next. I mean, of course, that starts with a leader in a culture of blame and undoing that. But when there's a culture of blame, often we need to spend some time on kind of self-awareness and people understanding that, you know, whatever's happening in the system, they are contributing to it, whether they're actively doing something or not doing something is also contributing to that. So rather than kind of pointing the finger at other people or other things or other systems for things not working, it's about saying, okay, so what part might I be playing in this, and also what is within my control and what isn't. And so there is, you know, we do look to a lot of tools, particularly technology, to help us to collaborate. And at the same time, it's a real human skill where that self-awareness and that kind of stopping, being thoughtful, thinking strategically really is absolutely vital. Otherwise, we can't move forward. So yeah, that sort of culture of blame, where I would start in a culture of blame is that, well, let's kind of really take stock of the situation and let's all kind of think, well, what are we individually contributing to that? So that there's that level of, yeah, I am also part of that culture.
Talking of which, perhaps if people would like to put further questions in the chat, did you want to move to your slides, because I don't want to miss out on the
I will do.
tips and techniques, which thanks, Alison.
Yeah, so I just want to share a few practical things that we can be working with our leaders to do. Some of the things that I would love, you know, I try and encourage the leaders that I work with and teams that I work with to adopt. I think the first one is just having this compelling vision for your team and creating what I like to call a team culture roadmap. So in the same way that, you know, a leader, a team will have business goals, culture should be part of that. It shouldn't be this kind of separate thing that we work on every now and again. It's actually, if we've got business goals to achieve, then what culture do we need to have as a team to achieve those goals? And kind of really combine them, link how we need to be in our behaviours and our mindsets with the goals that we're trying to achieve, and pull that all together in a team culture roadmap. It's really about, if you've ever been in one of my talks before, you would have seen this slide, but really moving away from seeing the work that we do together as a team and team building as separate things. You know, team building is sometimes a one-off event, the one-off workshop, and actually seeing that they have a bit more of an overlap, or they're one of the same thing, building our teams as we're working together, not seeing it as completely separate. The other thing, this is kind of a large part of the book, but I also created a 5-pillar framework because I know this is huge. This is a really broad area and it can be quite overwhelming for leaders. And, you know, I think part of making collaboration tangible and really clear and practical is about giving people an entry point. So I developed this 5-pillar framework. These 5 elements need to be in place for a team to be high performing: alignment, cohesion, communication, design, and change. And I'm just going to share an activity or an approach that can match each of these pillars. And, you know, throughout this is all about workshop culture. So this idea of facilitation and having these collaborative conversations is the thread throughout all of these areas. So alignment, leaders should be involving their team members in big picture thinking. It's not about coming up with a vision and then handing that to the team and saying, okay, go off and do that. It's about involving that team and building that vision. Like, what is it that we want to achieve as a team? What makes us unique? What should our values be? How can we work together more effectively? And having that alignment, being involved in that conversation, creates that clarity, but also creates that buy-in. And that is a collaborative conversation. That's a workshop, essentially. I call these like big picture thinking workshops where teams are able to zoom out and look forward, look kind of, you know, above and beyond and into the future a little bit more, rather than being focused on their to-do list every single day and not seeing how what they're doing fits into the bigger picture. The cohesion pillar, giving team members time to reflect and build self-awareness. So this kind of goes back to Caroline's point about the blame culture, right? In order to work well with others, we need to be super aware of how we work, understand, you know, how we work well, how we communicate, how we interact with others, and then understand that other people's approach to the way they work will be different, and have those conversations about different ways of working with the team, so that you start to build that empathy for team members. And going back to the alignment pillar, realizing that we've all got this big goal in mind. We may have different ways that we each individually work towards that goal, but we're all in it together. And we may come up against little bumps because of, you know, conflicts or different ways of working, but actually that's what makes our team unique. So taking that time to reflect and build that self-awareness, understanding how they work, how they contribute to the bigger picture, what they're contributing to this system of the team culture as well, and whether that is productive or whether they may be putting barriers up themselves in place towards a high performing team culture. Communication, I mean, I think this is the most practical, crafting better meetings. Like literally you can take techniques from how facilitators run workshops to make your meetings better. And actually there's research that shows that if we make our meetings better, more inclusive and more productive, more kind of facilitated, then we can also improve people's experience of work, improve engagement of work. I really do believe that people's experience of their meetings has a direct impact on how they feel and how they experience their workplace. Designing, co-creating routines and rituals. So what are the things that you need to put in place to help your team stay connected and communicating? And how can you make them the way that your team works rather than, again, these kind of one-off events? Like, how do you build this into the fabric of your culture? And what can you put in place to make it easier for your team to live up to those values that you've created? And the final aspect is around change, behaviour change, having regular conversations about team habits, making it okay for a team to take stop and say, okay, you know, this is what we agreed to. Is it working? What are the things that we're doing that are really supporting our team culture? What are the things that are more unproductive about our team culture? And how can we, again, have the conversations to design better ways of working? So having regular conversations about team culture, team habits, and making it part of the way that you work. So that's just the framework in kind of everything together, and some of those approaches and techniques. It is a bit of a toolkit. I mean, I do believe these 5 conversations or conversations around these areas will go a lot of the way to improving team culture, not just because of the content of what is discussed, but the way those conversations are facilitated and how that changes the way that people interact with their culture and interact with each other. I guess the final thing that I want to say, it does come back to what Bridget mentioned actually around sort of future-proofing team culture. I mean, all of this stuff here is about kind of making an immediate impact on how people work together, and it will have an immediate impact, and it will have an immediate impact on team members' experience of work. But if we think like what this is doing for the future, the more that we train our leaders in this way of working to create better team environments for their team members and involve team members in building that culture, the more team members are going to be exposed to better forms of leadership. And they're going to have reference points so that when they go on to lead their own teams, they're going to know what it takes and what it looks like, what good collaboration looks like. So kind of investing in leaders now is about kind of future-proofing culture for the future, improving retention and engagement, and setting ourselves up to have better leaders for now and the future. So that's where I'm going to end it. Richard has kind of introduced Bracket. I don't just write books. I do have a company. I don't think I'd want to just be writing books, to be honest, because it's quite a painful process. But what we do at Bracket is we do really try and really instill these principles with the teams that we work with, and it is about creating future-proof teams that can respond to change, uncertainty, stay resilient because they've got that strong team culture. If you do want to get in touch with me, I know Richard is going to share this as well. I do have a 30% discount on offer for the book at the moment if you buy it directly from my publisher. You just need to enter that code, and I know that Richard will send that to you afterwards. And if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn to continue the conversation, then you can find me on LinkedIn, or you can scan this nifty QR code to get my profile up straight away. So
thanks ever so much, Alison.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks so much for doing that, Alison. That's great. And we'll send around the discount code and the deck later with the recording. To all network members, thanks so much for coming along. Lovely to see you. Thanks for taking part. I hope the conversation was useful. Leave us some feedback, which is always useful, and we'll see you the next time. Alison, thank you very much again.
Thank you.